What happens when the soul of a poet is too vast for just one language? What if the essence of that poet, his mysticism, his longing, his love for the divine, risks being lost every time his words are translated? This is the dilemma we face with Jalal al-Din Rumi, the 13th century Persian Sufi poet whose verses have circled the globe, echoing across centuries in languages far removed from his own. Today, Rumi is celebrated as one of the most widely read poets in the world. But there's a tension at the heart of that popularity. Has Rumi been mistranslated into relevance? Or have we managed to carry his essence across cultures and centuries without diluting his depth? Welcome to the poetic battlefield of translation, where meaning, mysticism, and language converge and often collide. You're watching The Unfolding Journey, a channel where we go beyond the headlines and hashtags to explore the deeper layers of spirituality, culture, and human experience. Here, we ask the questions others often avoid and follow the threads that lead us into the heart of wisdom traditions across the globe. If you're a seeker, a thinker, or simply someone who wants to understand the world more deeply, this space is for you. Let's unfold this journey together. Language is both a bridge and a barrier. It connects us to the thoughts and emotions of others, but also traps us within our own cultural frameworks. Nowhere is this more evident than in the translation of poetry. Rumi wrote in Persian, a language known for its musicality, metaphors, and depth. But he didn't just write poetry, he wrote as a mystic, a teacher, a seeker. His verses are not merely aesthetic, they are devotional. His metaphors don't serve the ego, they dissolve it. His love is not romantic, it is cosmic. To translate Rumi, then, is not just to shift words from one language to another. It's to translate a worldview, a theology, a metaphysical framework, a centuries-old mystical path. And yet, Rumi is the most popular poet in the English-speaking world. So how did this transformation happen? Before we can understand what is lost or gained in translation, we have to understand what Rumi's poetry is in its original form. Rumi was not just a poet, he was a Sufi master, deeply rooted in the Islamic mystical tradition. His masterpiece, the Masnavi spiritual couplets, has been called the Quran in Persian by scholars. His other major work, the Divani Shamsi Tabrizi, is a collection of ecstatic poems composed after the disappearance of his beloved companion Shams. In Rumi's original Persian, the poems are dense with Quranic references, hadith citations, symbolism of Sufi metaphysics, mystical cosmology, divine yearning that's hard to categorize in secular terms. Words like ishq, divine love, fana, annihilation of the self, and tawhid, unity of God, carry layers of theological significance. This spiritual depth is what makes Rumi's poetry so transformational, but also so hard to translate. Much of Rumi's modern popularity can be attributed to Coleman Barks, an American poet who published interpretations of Rumi's poems starting in the 1970s and 1980s. Here's the key detail. Barks doesn't speak Persian. Instead, he worked from earlier English translations, particularly those by scholars like A.J. Arbery and Reynold Nicholson, and adapted them into free-verse poetic forms that resonate with Western audiences. Here's a well-known Barks rendition. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. It's haunting, beautiful, and widely quoted. But in Persian, that couplet is filled with Sufi terminology pointing toward the idea of divine unity, a concept embedded within Islamic theology. The field isn't just a metaphor for peace. It's a mystical station beyond duality, ego, and worldly distinctions. Barks' translation flattens the spiritual depth into a universalist message. It removes the Islamic scaffolding while preserving the emotional beauty. Some praise this approach for making Rumi accessible. Others argue it's a decontextualization, even a colonial act that strips Rumi of his religious and cultural identity. So the question is, can you translate Rumi without translating Islam? Language carries culture, and spiritual language, especially in Sufism, carries layers upon layers of meaning. For example, consider the word wine. In Sufi poetry, wine doesn't refer to intoxication in the literal sense. It's a metaphor for divine ecstasy, annihilation of the self, and closeness to God. When translated into English, though, it can seem like mere romanticism or sensual intoxication, missing the higher mystical purpose. Similarly, metaphors involving beloved, flame, union, separation, drunkenness, and madness are all part of a larger spiritual lexicon. Without understanding the theology, ritual practice, and mystical symbolism, These translations can become feel-good poetry without substance. Rumi's message is then flattened to a Hallmark card level, beautiful but stripped of soul. Translation always walks the tightrope between being faithful and being free. Too faithful, and the text becomes stiff, academic, and inaccessible. Too free, and it loses its roots, becoming something new altogether. Some contemporary scholars and translators, like Jawid Mojaddedi and Franklin Lewis, have tried to restore the balance. Their work remains closer to the original Persian while still offering poetic fluency in English. Mojaddedi, for instance, insists on preserving Rumi's Islamic context. He argues that un-Islamic Rumi is unfaithful Rumi. His translations reflect the complexity and theological subtlety of Rumi's thought. This approach may not yield the same Instagram-worthy quotes, but it brings readers into Rumi's world on his terms, not ours. It invites transformation rather than mere inspiration. There's a deeper question beneath all this. Do we have a responsibility to preserve a poet's religious and cultural identity when translating their work? Especially when that poet, like Rumi, is from a tradition that is often misrepresented or misunderstood in global discourse. In an age where Islam is frequently portrayed through narrow political lenses, reducing one of its greatest mystics to a vague spiritual guru might do more harm than good. We must ask, are we honoring Rumi's voice or appropriating it? Are we hearing what he said or what we want him to have said? Translation, then, is not just a literary act. It's a moral one. Despite the challenges, translation remains a vital bridge. Without translation, the world would not know Rumi. His light would remain locked in Persian script, accessible only to scholars and native speakers. Thanks to translators, flawed though they may be, millions have glimpsed Rumi's wisdom. And perhaps that's the paradox. Translation both distorts and delivers. It waters down, but it also opens doors. The best approach may not be to reject modern translations, but to read them with awareness, to explore the original meanings, to go beyond the quote and seek the context. Rumi himself would have encouraged this. After all, he wrote, "Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure." Let us not get lost in translation. Let us use it as a path to deeper truth. Rumi's poetry is not just meant to be read, it's meant to be lived. But to live it fully, we must understand where it comes from and what it asks of us. If you found this exploration meaningful, consider subscribing to The Unfolding Journey, where we dive deep into topics that challenge, inspire, and transform. Hit the bell so you never miss an episode. Books, leave a comment below. Which Rumi translation speaks to you most? Have you explored the Persian versions? And remember, as Rumi said, the wound is the place where the light enters you. Let that light guide you. Until next time, stay curious.